Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? That question echoed in Priya Sethi's mind as she sat quietly at the far end of the Sethi family dining table. The golden light from the chandelier gleamed off the polished teak, casting soft, warm glows on faces buzzing with laughter and animated conversation. Aromas of cumin, cardamom, and fresh cilantro wafted from bowls of dal and trays of samosas, mingling with the faint scent of jasmine that always seemed to linger in the Sethi home. Yet, as the family celebrated another Sunday gathering, a weekly tradition in their Edison, New Jersey suburb, Priya's smile felt practiced, almost brittle. She glanced around the table, her eyes tracing the familiar pattern of praise and affection, wondering, not for the first time, if anyone truly saw her. "Simran, I still can't believe you managed that entire project launch on your own." Meena Sethi's voice rose above the clatter of spoons and plates. The family matriarch, regal in her deep maroon sari, beamed at her daughter, her bracelets chiming softly as she gestured animatedly. "When you were little, you were always so determined. Now look at you, winning awards at work." Simran, radiant and effortlessly poised, tossed her glossy hair over one shoulder. "It was a team effort, Mom," she said, but her smile was unmistakably proud. Across the table, Rajiv Sethi, the family's quiet silver-haired patriarch, nodded in approval, his eyes crinkling as he raised his glass in a silent toast to his daughter. Dinesh Patel, longtime family friend and a fixture at Sethi gatherings, chimed in with a hearty, "We all knew she'd make us proud. Next, you'll be running the whole company, Simran." Laughter erupted, filling the room with warmth. Plates were passed, naan was torn, chutneys spooned generously onto plates. Amid the bustle, Priya reached for the water jug, refilling glasses with her usual quiet efficiency. She caught Meena's eye, hopeful for even a fleeting acknowledgement, but Meena's attention had already shifted to recounting Simran's childhood victories. Arjun, Priya's husband, sat beside her, his eyes on his phone, thumb flicking through work emails between mouthfuls of rice. Occasionally, he'd lean over, whispering a gentle, "You okay?" or squeezing her hand under the table, but his mind was clearly elsewhere, caught between his demanding job and the expectations of being the eldest. Priya's gaze drifted to the window. Outside, the suburban street was lined with maples just beginning to bud, the evening light painting the sky in pale streaks of pink and gold. Cars were parked neatly in driveways. Children's bikes lay abandoned on front lawns. It was the kind of neighborhood where neighbors waved as they walked their dogs, and the local Indian grocery store was a short drive away, close enough for Priya to feel the comfort of home, yet far enough to feel the ache of distance from her own family in Mumbai. Inside, the Sethi household was a blend of modern American convenience and traditional Indian warmth. The kitchen, with its granite countertops and gleaming stainless steel appliances, was filled with the sounds of sizzling onions and the rhythmic clatter of utensils. Framed family photos lined the hallway: Simran's graduation, Arjun's wedding, Rajiv and Meena at Niagara Falls. In each, Priya noticed, her own presence was often at the edge, smiling but never the focal point. The routine was always the same. Priya would spend hours helping Meena prepare for these gatherings, marinating paneer, chopping vegetables, ironing tablecloths. She took pride in making sure every detail was perfect, the silverware polished, the candles lit, the centerpiece of fresh marigolds arranged just so. But when the family sat down to eat, the conversation would turn to Simran's latest promotion, Dinesh's community work, or Arjun's recent project at work. If Priya's name was mentioned at all, it was usually in passing. "Priya, can you bring more rice?" Or, "Thank you, Beta, for setting the table." Tonight was no different. As dessert was served, mango shrikhand in delicate glass bowls, Meena launched into another story, this time about Dinesh's generosity at the temple fundraiser. "He stayed late every night last week, you know. Such commitment. Not everyone is willing to give so much of themselves." Dinesh grinned modestly, waving off the praise. "It was nothing, Meenaji. We all do our part." But Priya couldn't help the sting that rose in her chest. Only hours earlier, she'd spent an afternoon designing the fundraiser flyers and handling the chaotic RSVP list, tasks she'd volunteered for, quietly, wanting to help but never seeking the spotlight. No one mentioned her efforts. No one even seemed to remember. Arjun finally looked up from his phone, oblivious to the undercurrent. "Simran, did you see the article in Business Weekly? They featured your company on the front page." Simran's face lit up. "Really? That's amazing." Conversation swelled again, and Priya found herself retreating behind her smile, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She watched as Meena reached over to touch Simran's cheek, pride shining in her eyes, and felt a pang of longing so sharp it surprised her. After the meal, Priya slipped away to the kitchen, rinsing dishes and stacking them in the dishwasher. The sounds from the living room drifted in. More stories, more laughter, more praise. Mina's voice rang out with a warmth Priya had rarely felt directed at her. She moved methodically, stacking plates, scrubbing pans, wiping countertops. Her reflection in the kitchen window caught her eye. A young woman with tired eyes, hair pulled back in a neat bun, sari sleeves rolled up to her elbows. She looked calm, composed, but inside, a storm brewed. Her thoughts wandered to her early days in the Sethi home. Back then, everything had felt new and hopeful. Learning family recipes from Mina, decorating the living room with Diwali lights, sharing inside jokes with Simran. But as months turned into years, Priya realized that her place in the family was always peripheral. She was the helper, the organizer, the steady hand that kept things running, but never the one who drew admiration or affection. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter, that recognition wasn't why she did these things. Still, every unspoken word lodged itself inside her, growing heavier with each gathering. The contrast between the family's lavish praise for others and their polite neglect of her couldn't be ignored. A sudden peal of laughter from the living room snapped her back to the present. She peeked around the corner, watching as Mina gestured animatedly, retelling an old story about Simran's childhood spelling bee victory. Rajiv nodded approvingly, Dinesh clapped, and Simran basked in the attention. Arjun, as always, played the role of supportive brother, joining in the applause. Priya's phone buzzed, a message from her own mother in Mumbai. "How was dinner? Did everyone enjoy your cooking?" Priya typed a quick reply. "Yes, it went well. Everyone loved the food." She hesitated before sending it, her finger hovering over the screen, then pressed send. She didn't mention how invisible she felt, how the compliments floated over her like autumn leaves, never quite landing. A wave of exhaustion washed over her. She finished cleaning, then walked slowly to the guest bathroom, splashing cool water on her face. The mirror above the sink reflected a woman who was trying so hard to fit into a world that sometimes felt just out of reach. She remembered the early days of her marriage, the promise she'd made to herself, to be a good daughter-in-law, to support Arjun, to build a family in this new country. But she hadn't expected how lonely that path could feel. Voices interrupted her reverie. Mina's sharp, affectionate tone. "Simran, you've always been the star of our family." Simran's laughter, light and musical. Rajiv's approving hum. Dinesh's teasing banter. Priya stood in the hallway for a moment, taking a deep breath. She straightened her sari, smoothed her hair, and stepped back into the living room, plastering a gentle smile on her face. Mina turned. "Priya, could you make some chai for everyone? Simran likes hers extra cardamom." "Of course, Mummy Ji," Priya replied, her voice soft but steady. She moved to the kitchen, expertly blending tea leaves, milk, and spices, the familiar motions soothing even as her mind churned. As she handed out the steaming cups, her hands shook just a little. She watched as everyone sipped, complimenting the aroma, the flavor, the warmth. Still, no one said, "Thank you, Priya." Not directly, not sincerely. Rajiv, ever the diplomat, caught her eye and nodded with a small, appreciative smile. It was something, but it wasn't enough to fill the growing emptiness inside her. Later that night, after the guests had left and the house was quiet, Priya sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her reflection in the vanity mirror. The moonlight filtered in through the sheer curtains, bathing the room in a pale, silvery glow. She thought of all the little things she did, the meals, the errands, the emotional labor, the silent sacrifices. She wondered if she disappeared tomorrow, would anyone in this house truly notice the difference? Would they miss her, or just her presence? Arjun entered, loosening his tie, exhaustion etched into his features. He glanced at Priya, sensing her mood, but said nothing. Instead, he sat beside her, rubbing his eyes. "Long day?" he asked. She nodded, unsure where to start, unsure if it even mattered. "Yes, just tired." He squeezed her hand, offering silent comfort, but his mind was already drifting. To work, to family obligations, to everything except the storm quietly raging inside his wife. As Arjun disappeared into the bathroom, Priya gazed at her reflection, searching for answers. For a long moment, she simply stared, willing herself to see the woman she wanted to be, confident, valued, seen. But all she saw was herself, alone with her doubts. The silence of the house pressed in around her. She wondered, not for the first time, would you speak up or stay silent? Priya's day began the way it always did, before sunrise, with the soft hum of her phone alarm vibrating beside her pillow. She moved quietly through the semi-darkness of the bedroom, careful not to wake Arjun, who mumbled something incoherent and tugged his blanket tighter. In the hallway, muted family photos lined the walls. Arjun's graduation, Simran's award ceremony, Meena and Rajiv on their wedding day. In them, everyone smiled. Priya's own face appeared in only a few, always at the edge, her smile tentative. Downstairs, the kitchen was still and shadowed. She started the coffee, then opened her planner, its pages thick with notes, grocery lists, reminders to check in on Meena's diabetes meds, a sticky note about Simran's new presentation. She added a star next to try new malai kofta recipe and underlined it twice. Tonight, there would be another family dinner, and this time, she wanted to make something special. The morning passed in a blur of tasks, folding laundry, responding to a client's email about a design revision, sorting the recycling. Priya managed her freelance projects from the small sunroom, her laptop propped up amid bills and cookbooks. She texted the family group chat with a cheerful, "Can't wait for dinner tonight." "Trying something new?" Simran replied with an exuberant string of emojis. Meena sent a thumbs up. Priya spent the afternoon peeling potatoes and chopping onions, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. She added cream and cashews to the simmering sauce, tasting, adjusting, tasting again. The kitchen filled with the aroma of spices, rich, comforting, hopeful. By 6 o'clock, the Sethi home was alive with the sounds of arrival. Simran's heels clicking on the tile, Meena's voice rising above the others, Dinesh Patel's laughter echoing from the foyer. Rajiv greeted everyone with a polite nod, as always. The living room glowed with soft lamps and the flicker of devotional candles. Priya set the table quietly, arranging each fork and napkin with care. She glanced at Arjun, who was on the couch, absorbed in his phone, half listening as Meena recounted a story about her neighbor's daughter winning a scholarship. Dinner began. The family gathered around the table, plates filling with food. Priya watched, nerves humming, as everyone sampled her malai kofta. For a fleeting moment, she hoped someone might notice the extra effort. But conversation veered, as always, toward Simran, her new project at the tech startup, her recent feature in a community magazine, her plans to run a 10K. "This is delicious, Simran. You really know how to balance your schedule and still look after your health." Meena beamed across the table. Simran, radiant as ever, laughed and waved her hand modestly. Rajiv turned to Dinesh. "And Dinesh, thank you for helping us get tickets for the concert. You always know the right people." Dinesh grinned. "Oh, it was nothing at all. Glad I could help." Priya looked down at her plate, pushing a stray pea with her fork. No one mentioned the food. After dinner, Priya cleared the table while Meena and Simran moved to the living room to discuss next weekend's community event. Dinesh hovered nearby, offering to help, but Meena waved him off. "Let Priya handle these things, she's so good at it," she said, not unkindly, but with the air of someone assigning a routine chore. In the kitchen, the clatter of dishes was loud in the quiet. Priya's chest tightened, not with anger, but with a kind of hollow ache. She knew she shouldn't expect praise for things as simple as cooking or cleaning, but she had hoped just once to hear her name mentioned with pride. Later that night, after Arjun had finished a late work call, Priya found him sitting at the dining table, scrolling through his laptop. She hesitated, then sat across from him. "Arjun," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "do you ever feel like maybe I'm just not enough for your family?" He looked up, surprised. "What?" "Priya, what are you talking about? You're doing great. Mom she's always been like that. Don't let it bother you." She tried to explain, gently, how it felt to be overlooked, how every small effort seemed invisible, swallowed by the noise of other people's achievements. Arjun shrugged, offering a sympathetic smile. "You're overthinking it, Priya. They care about you. Mom just likes to talk about Simran and Dinesh because well, you know how she is." Priya nodded, but the words didn't comfort her. She felt herself shrinking, her worries dismissed as trivial. When Arjun returned to his work, Priya lingered at the table, the glow of her phone screen reflecting off the polished wood as she scrolled through old photos. Her wedding day, her first festival with the Sethis, her parents waving from thousands of miles away in Mumbai. In the days that followed, Priya threw herself into being helpful. She volunteered to coordinate the snacks for the upcoming Diwali Mela, spending hours drafting emails, organizing sign-up sheets, and shopping for ingredients. She helped Simran brainstorm marketing ideas for her side business, sketching out logo concepts, and drafting social media posts. Each time she told herself that perhaps this would be the moment someone noticed. But at the community event, Meena introduced Simran to their neighbors with enthusiasm. "My daughter, she's the one behind all these beautiful decorations, and Dinesh, he helped with the music." When Rajiv thanked the volunteers at the end of the night, he read out a list of names: Simran, Dinesh, a few others. Priya's name was left unsaid. Afterward, as she packed up leftover samosas and folded plastic chairs, Simran breezed past, her phone to her ear. Thanks, Priya. You're a lifesaver. The words were hurried, tossed over her shoulder. Priya managed a weak smile, but her heart wasn't in it. She returned home exhausted, her hands raw from scrubbing trays. In the quiet of her bedroom, Priya opened her journal and began to write. The words came slowly, a mixture of disappointment and hope. Maybe I expect too much. Maybe this is just how families are. But why does it hurt so much to be invisible? I want to believe that one day I'll be seen for who I am, not just what I do for everyone. She paused, her pen hovering above the page. The loneliness was sharp, but within it was a question, one she knew many others must have felt too. Have you ever felt unappreciated for everything you do? If so, you're not alone. I hope you'll subscribe to my story and join me as I try to find my voice. As Priya set her journal aside, she glanced out the window at the quiet street, porch lights glowing softly in the suburban night. Somewhere, laughter drifted from a neighbor's house. Priya closed her eyes, letting herself hope that tomorrow, something might change. But for now, her silence remained, heavy, unbroken, waiting. The day of Simran's promotion party arrived with the electric tension of a summer storm. Unspoken expectations, layered beneath the celebratory atmosphere, charged every glance and gesture. The Sethi home was transformed. Marigold garlands hung over the entryway, trays of sweets lined the kitchen island, and a gentle hum of conversation filled the living room. Guests flowed in and out, their laughter mingling with the upbeat Bollywood playlist, streaming softly from hidden speakers. Priya moved through the house like a careful current, checking the chafing dishes, tidying used glasses, refilling the chai pot before anyone noticed it was empty. She wore a soft blue sari, the same shade Arjun had once said brought out the warmth in her eyes. It was her attempt to feel visible, if only for herself. Everywhere she turned, Simran was at the center, radiant in a deep red lehenga, her smile wide and effortless. Meena hovered nearby, ushering relatives from the Patel and Kaur families to come meet our superstar. Even Dinesh, the ever-pleasant family friend, was greeted with enthusiastic hugs and offered the seat of honor near Rajiv. Priya caught snippets of praise as she moved. We're so proud of Simran. She's always been so ambitious. Dinesh, those lilies are beautiful. You always bring such good taste. Meena, everything is perfect. How do you manage it all? But never, not once, was Priya's name spoken in appreciation. Not for the samosas she'd woken at dawn to fry, or the delicate rangoli she'd drawn by the front door, or the weeks of planning she'd coordinated with the local caterer to ease Meena's workload. She smiled, nodding at compliments meant for others, her heart thudding quietly beneath her sari's pleats. As the evening wore on, the living room grew crowded, laughter bubbling louder with each retelling of Simran's office stories. Meena called for everyone's attention, gently clinking a spoon against her glass. The room fell silent, all eyes on the matriarch. I want to thank everyone who made this evening so special, Meena began, her voice ringing with pride. Simran, my dear, you always make us proud. And Dinesh, what would we do without you? Always bringing flowers and joy to our home. Rajiv, thank you for helping with the arrangements. Arjun, for making time despite your busy schedule. Even our neighbors, the Patels, who brought such delicious burfi. Priya stood by the kitchen doorway, back pressed against the cool frame, her fingers curled tight around the edge of her glass. Her name hung in the air, unspoken, as Meena's gaze swept the room and moved on. The applause erupted, echoing against the hardwood floors. Priya felt something inside her unravel. As the laughter swelled, she slipped quietly out of the room, the voices and music blurring into a single, distant hum. She made her way down the hallway, past the framed family photos and the scent of incense burning by the puja shelf, until she reached the quiet of the guest bedroom. She closed the door gently behind her. The silence was heavy, pressing on her chest. She sat on the edge of the bed, sari pooling around her, shoulders trembling. She pressed the heels of her hands to her eyes, willing herself not to cry. For a moment, she let the numbness in, let herself exist unacknowledged, just as she felt in this family. A soft knock sounded on the door. She didn't answer, but it opened anyway. Arjun's silhouette filled the doorway, concern etched deep into his brow. Priya, he said, his voice tentative. Are you okay? I've been looking for you. She shook her head, unable to form words. He came closer, kneeling in front of her. What's wrong? Did someone say something? Priya met his eyes, the dam inside her finally breaking. No one has to say anything, Arjun. That's the problem. I'm invisible. I work so hard. I do everything I can to help your family, and it's like, I'm not even here. Your mother thanks everyone. Simran, Dinesh, even the neighbors. But never me. Not once. Arjun's face faltered, guilt flickering in his eyes. I didn't realize you felt that way. I'm sorry, Priya. I honestly thought you knew how much we all appreciate you. She gave a tired laugh, wiping her eyes. How could I? No one ever says it. I'm not asking for a parade, Arjun. Just to be seen. To matter. He sat beside her, taking her hand in his. You do matter. I should have noticed. I should have stood up for you. A tense silence filled the room. Down the hall, the party continued, oblivious to the unraveling happening here. Arjun squeezed her hand, resolve hardening his features. I can't let this go on. I'm going to talk to Ma. She needs to hear this. No, Arjun, Priya whispered, fear tightening her voice. Please don't make a scene. I don't want to be the reason for more drama. He shook his head. This isn't drama. This is about respect. You deserve better than this, Priya. My family needs to know. Before she could protest, Arjun stood and left the room, his jaw set. Priya stayed frozen, heart pounding, unsure if she wanted to follow or hide until everyone left. Back in the living room, Meena was recounting stories of Simran's childhood mischiefs to a circle of guests, basking in the adulation. Arjun approached her, voice low but firm. Ma, can I talk to you for a minute? In private. Meena blinked, surprised by Arjun's tone. Now? In the middle of Simran's party? He nodded, not relenting. Yes, please. She excused herself, following Arjun into the quiet of the hallway. What's this about, Arjun? He took a breath, choosing his words carefully. Ma, I think you don't realize Priya feels left out. She does so much for this family, but you never acknowledge her. Tonight, you thanked everyone but her. She's hurt, Ma. Really hurt. Meena's eyes widened, her mouth falling open. I didn't mean to. Priya is always helping, always doing things quietly. I suppose I just took it for granted. She never complains. She's not like Simran, always talking about what she's achieved. I thought she preferred it this way. Arjun's voice softened. She's quiet, yes, but she wants to belong, Ma. She wants to feel seen. She deserves it. Meena's expression shifted from surprise to something more uncertain, guilt, perhaps, or defensiveness. I never wanted her to feel invisible. She's part of this family. She doesn't feel like she is, Arjun replied, the words heavy. Meena looked away, lips pressed tight. I'll talk to her. I didn't know. Arjun nodded, emotion raw in his voice. Thank you, Ma. Please. He returned to the guest room, where Priya sat unmoving. He closed the door gently. I talked to her. She understands now, Priya. She didn't know, but she wants to make it right. Priya's face was streaked with tears, but a small, uncertain hope flickered in her eyes. Are you sure? Arjun smiled, pulling her close. I'm sure, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. A few minutes later, a hesitant knock came at the door. Meena entered, her usual briskness subdued. Priya, she began, voice trembling just a little. I'm so sorry. I never realized how much you do because you do it so quietly. I should have thanked you tonight and all the other nights. You're a part of this family, and I'm grateful for you. Please forgive me. Priya looked up, emotion warring in her chest. Relief, disbelief, and a cautious hope. Meena crossed the room, taking Priya's hands in hers. You're not invisible. I see you now, and I'll do better. For the first time in years, Priya felt the walls around her heart soften. The words she'd longed for had been spoken, not in grand gestures, but in a private, honest moment. The ache inside her eased, just a little. As the sounds of celebration trickled in from down the hall, Priya let herself believe, for the first time, that things might truly change. The evening after Simran's promotion party, the Sethi home was quieter than usual. Outside, dusk had settled over Edison, painting the suburban streets in gentle lavender and gold. Inside, the echoes of laughter and clinking glasses from earlier seemed strangely distant, replaced by a soft, tense hush. Priya stood by the kitchen window, her hands resting on the cool granite countertop, staring out as porch lights flickered on along the street. She could still hear Meena's voice from hours earlier, warm and proud as she praised Simran and Dinesh, everyone but Priya. The words had felt like invisible walls, shutting her out of the family she so desperately wanted to belong to. But tonight, for the first time, she hadn't swallowed her feelings. She had let them spill out to Arjun, her voice trembling as she confessed how sidelined she felt. Arjun's face had shifted from confusion to concern, the weight of her words finally breaking through his well-meaning but dismissive reassurances. Priya had watched him leave to speak to Meena, her heart pounding with hope and dread. Now, as the house settled into its nighttime rhythm, footsteps approached behind her. She turned to see Arjun, his expression gentle but determined. "Mom wants to talk," he said softly. "Will you come to the living room?" Priya nodded, nerves fluttering in her stomach. She followed him past the quiet dining table, where the last remnants of dinner sat cooling in their serving bowls, and into the living room. The familiar space, walls lined with family photos, a faded rug underfoot, suddenly felt like the stage for something important. Meena was waiting, perched on the sofa, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Rajiv sat beside her, his usual composure tinged with concern. Simran lingered near the doorway, her brow furrowed. Priya sat down, smoothing her kurta over her knees. Silence settled. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic outside. Meena cleared her throat. "Priya Beta, Arjun told me how you've been feeling." Her voice was softer than usual, the edges dulled by uncertainty. I didn't realize. I thought you knew how much we depend on you." Priya looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes it feels like I'm invisible, Ma. I try to help, to be part of the family, but—" She hesitated, forcing herself to meet Meena's eyes. "I never hear it from you. Not like you praise Simran or even Dinesh." Rajiv leaned forward, his hands clasped. "Priya, I hope you know we appreciate you. Sometimes in our family we don't say things as often as we should. We take each other for granted." Simran crossed the room, sitting beside Priya. "I'm sorry, Bobby," she said quietly. "I didn't notice either. You do so much for all of us." Meena reached over, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it atop Priya's. "You are the one who keeps this family running. I am old-fashioned, I suppose, always thinking praise is for big achievements. But maybe I forgot that the small things matter most." Priya's eyes stung with tears, but this time they were different, softer, lighter. She looked at Meena, uncertain but hopeful. "It's not about big achievements, Ma. I just want to feel like I belong." Meena squeezed her hand. "You do. And I'm sorry for not saying it. From now on, I'll do better." The moment stretched, warm and fragile. Priya felt the ache in her chest loosen, replaced by something steadier. Acceptance, maybe even the beginnings of belonging. Arjun sat beside her, slipping his arm around her shoulders. "I'm sorry too, Priya. I should have listened sooner." Priya smiled at him, a real, unguarded smile. "Thank you for speaking up." As the family sat together, the air seemed to shift. The old patterns hadn't shattered overnight, but a door had opened, a space for honesty, for gratitude, for connection. In the weeks that followed, life at the Sethi house changed in small but meaningful ways. At the next Sunday dinner, Meena called Priya into the kitchen before the meal began. "Beta, the samosas are perfect. You've learned to make them just like my mother used to." Priya's cheeks flushed with pride. "Thank you, Ma." Later, as the family gathered around the table, Meena raised her glass. "I want to thank Priya for organizing tonight, and for always thinking of everyone before herself. We are lucky to have you." The words were simple, but they landed like sunlight on frozen ground. Priya glanced at Arjun, who squeezed her hand beneath the table. Even Simran and Rajiv offered her beaming smiles. After dinner, as Priya cleared plates with Simran, her sister-in-law nudged her gently. "Bobby, will you help me with my new project? I could really use your advice." Priya laughed, the tension of the past weeks finally melting away. "Of course. Teamwork, right?" Simran grinned. "Right." One afternoon, as Priya sipped chai on the front porch, Dinesh Patel stopped by. He handed her a bouquet of marigolds, his usual cheerful self subdued. "I wanted to say thank you for always inviting me in," he said. "You make this house feel like home." Priya accepted the flowers, her heart full. For so long, she had questioned her place in this family, her worth measured in unnoticed gestures and unspoken words. But now, with honesty and vulnerability, she had claimed her seat at the table, not just as a caretaker, but as herself. The biggest change wasn't just the praise, though that helped. It was the way Priya saw herself. She began to set gentle boundaries, carving out time for her own freelance work and interests. She spoke up when she felt overlooked, and over time, the family learned to listen. Even Arjun, caught between old loyalties and new understanding, became her most steadfast ally. Priya started hosting small gatherings for neighborhood friends, blending Indian and American traditions in her own style. Her confidence grew with every shared meal, every genuine thank you, every moment of laughter that echoed through the Sethi home. She found herself journaling less about loneliness and more about gratitude, grateful for growth, for honesty, for a family willing to change, and for her own courage in breaking the silence. One evening, as the sunset bathed the street in apricot hues, Priya looked at her reflection, not in a mirror this time, but in the smiling faces around her dinner table. She saw herself not as invisible, but as integral. She belonged, not because she was perfect or silent, but because she was present, honest, and finally, heard. Turning to the camera, Priya's voice is gentle but strong. Have you ever felt invisible or unappreciated in your own family or anywhere in your life? I learned that sometimes we have to risk our comfort for the chance to be truly seen. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. She smiles, invitingly. I'd love to know, has there been a time when you spoke up or wished you had? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story touched you, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. You're not alone. Sometimes all it takes is one honest conversation to change everything. The camera lingers on Priya's serene, confident face as the family's laughter swells in the background, a testament to the power of voice, vulnerability, and the quiet courage to claim your place at the table. Fade out.